Welcome into another edition of Who's Number One. I'm Trey Wingo. While it's true, as we are endlessly reminded, that there is no I in team, there is a me. And while we here at ESPN Classic are all for teamwork, I mean, that's good, there are some nights when the spotlight lingers on the solo artiste, on the individual doing deeds that leave you going, whoa. So in this installment, we single out the singulars, the 20 greatest individual performances of all time.
2020.
On January 2nd, 1982, cramping, dehydrated, exhausted, Kellen Winslow was helped off the Orange Bowl field that he had made his own personal stage of heroics. The Chargers tight end caught 13 passes, one for a touchdown, and blocked the potential game-winning field goal attempt as San Diego edged Miami 41-38 in overtime in an AFC divisional playoff classic.
Kellen's performance just represents what that game was all about. Never say die, win at all costs, leave it all out there.
It was a great marriage with Don Coryell's offense, with Fouts at the controls. Kellen was given an opportunity to showcase his talent.
And we can put him out on the outside where he can bully a little defensive back there, bring him in motion and still be a blocker inside, but he's lined up outside. And yet he had the ability to go downfield and catch a deep ball. Just pick the ball away from a lot of people because he is so big and he is so strong.
He would come out of the game like he was about to pass out, and they would administer to him on the sidelines.
I remember it was prickly hot. It was so hot that everybody was drenched.
Trainers were working on him, and the doctors, they were getting him back in shape. As soon as he could walk again, they'd get him back in the ball game. He would perform, make a couple catches, come back out. It was like going back and forth that whole time for Kellen.
There were times that we'd walk back in the huddle and we'd just say, somebody cover this guy.
He blocked for the running game. He caught big plays for him when they had to have the big plays, and then he was instrumental on special teams. He could barely drag himself up off of the ground after exerting all his energy to make a play. And there were a couple of times our players helped him up off the ground. And when our players came off to the sideline, I said, don't you ever help him up again. Let him get up by himself.
If you were to pick one game, one moment that vaulted him into the elite status and put him into the Hall of Fame, I think you have to look at that game and give that some pretty high marks.
It just seemed like he was more of a factor than any other single player on the field.
19.
On May 16th, 1980, in Philadelphia, 20-year-old rookie Earvin Magic Johnson demonstrated why he got his nickname. Taking over for the injured Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Johnson not only played center, but guard and forward as well, in a 42-point, 15-rebound, 7-assist performance that propelled the Lakers to the title.
Kareem is hurt. Magic's going to play center now. Okay, well, all right, he's 6'9", but he's a point guard. You know, you don't play center. And they're not playing the system of support here. They're only playing in the NBA Finals.
Magic was big. He was quick. He was a very, very hard worker. He was an exceptional point guard. The fact that one day he played all 5 positions, well, he's got the body to do it, you see. He's agile enough to bring the ball down. He can play the corners. He can play the off guard. He can play the center. When he did it, it was a little bit unusual.
I believe Kareem not playing was the worst thing that could have happened to the 76ers in that series.
His performance that game might have been one of the greatest of all time. 42 points. He shot the hook shot, the jump shot. He drove to the basket. He blocked a couple shots. I mean, he did it all.
18.
On June 11th, 1950, after nearly being killed in a car accident 16 months earlier, Ben Hogan won the U.S. Open in an 18-hole playoff at Marion. After soaking in overnight baths, he shot a 1-under-par 69 to beat Lloyd Mangrum by 4 strokes and George Fazio by 6. Never a great putter, he sealed his victory with a 50-footer for birdie at 17.
Ben had fortitude. He didn't know what quit was. He didn't even know that existed.
He could walk 18, but boy, it really hurt after the 18th. And nobody really thought that he would be able, for his comeback at the Open, to be able to walk the 72 holes.
He was just exhausted. And so when we came in, and of course he was disappointed he didn't win, but I thought he will never make it. So I said, I'm going to get your tub ready, get in and soak. He still had to soak his legs because, naturally he would get swelling.
To have been playing in pain virtually the whole time, wrapping his legs in ace bandages and taking God knows how many aspirin to get through. It was just another brick in this mystique that he built up.
That was probably one of the greatest comebacks in the 20th century, because this man was given up for dead.
17.
On October 18th, 1924, Red Grange returned the opening kickoff 95 yards for a touchdown against unbeaten Michigan, igniting a dazzling one-man exhibition. The Galloping Ghost of Illinois scored 3 more touchdowns in the first quarter on runs of 67, 56, and 44 yards. He raced for another touchdown later and threw a scoring pass, racking up 402 yards of total offense in a 39-14 upset special.
Well, they don't call him the Galloping Ghost for nothing.
Here was this humble Midwestern kid who was just making people miss tackles right and left, scoring touchdowns and bringing fame and fortune and glory to his university.
When you hear those numbers, it's remarkable. 4 touchdowns, before the game, most people sat down in their seats, and he's already got 4 touchdowns. These are the kind of numbers that if they were being put up today, it would just be stop the presses kind of stuff.
That was the first time that Red cut. He would always, sweep to the ends and go down the sidelines. He did that all day long, and they never caught on. It was bedlam all over the campus. I mean, people were going bananas. They treated him like he was God.
16.
On July 5th, 1980, in an epic 5-set Wimbledon final, Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe repeatedly pushed each other to the brink. To claim his 5th straight Wimbledon title, the Steely Swede had to regroup after losing a gripping 4th-set tiebreaker.
It was tennis from the gods.
I think I was almost like, this is too easy, it's happening too easy. And once I thought that, he sort of snuck in mentally and started to play better and better. The next thing I know, it's match point, and, the thing's almost over, and I'm able to regroup.
This tiebreak has taken on iconic significance.
Borg had McEnroe on the edge of elimination in the 4th set with 5 match points in a memorable 22-minute tiebreaker. But he couldn't seal the deal and lost 18-16.
7-all, 8-all, and I have match points. And John is coming up with these unbelievable shots. When I lost the tiebreaker, I was very disappointed in myself. I won this set. I won this match, and here I'm still sitting, changing side.
I played some tough matches, but I thought he was going to pack it in. But instead, he seemed to sort of pick it up physically a notch.
I'm starting to serve. And I know if John is breaking me, I'm going to lose.
He served 90% the last set, which was unheard of.
How he was able to put that behind him and lose 3 points on his serve in 7 serving games without being a serve and volley player. That is mind-boggling.
15.
On September 28th, the final day of the 1941 season, Ted Williams declined the easy way out. Rather than sit and let his 3.9955 average round up to 400, he risked playing both ends of a doubleheader against the Philadelphia A's. The sweet-swinging Red Sox went 4 for 5, then 2 for 3, ending with a 406 average. No one has hit 400 since.
Knowing Ted, he's not going to back into hitting 400, and of course he gets 6 for 8.
I think he would have rather have gone 0 for 8 and hit 394 than to sit on the bench.
He did go for it, and he only improved, of course, as it turns out, in that second game.
I just can't fathom a guy batting 500 times and getting 200 hits. I can't believe that can happen in big leagues. And that's 400.
No one has done it since, and no one had done it for a decade or so before. I don't think anybody's going to do that anytime soon.
14.
It will be a killer
and a chiller and a thriller when I get the gorilla in Manila.
On October 1st, 1975, in the third installment of their brutal trilogy, Muhammad Ali pounded out a TKO victory over Smokin' Joe Frazier in the Thriller in Manila. Frazier, all but blind, wasn't permitted to answer the bell for the 15th round by his trainer, Eddie Futch. Ali had lost the first fight and won the second. The third, he said, was the closest thing to dying he knew of.
All out war, you kidding? And whatever they got together, fireworks.
Frazier is very strong and scoring heavily.
Muhammad was special. He was able to suck it up and continue. And I don't know where he got the reservoir from. Because 11th round, he came back and he was exhausted, limp. But then he got it up and he did his thing.
It's 15 rounds, and here is round one.
It was a fight in three parts. The first part, Ali is just whipping on Frazier. Somehow, in the middle rounds, Frazier comes through. Frazier starts wailing, he cuts off the ring, he gets him on the ropes. He was killing Ali. And then it turned again.
Joe cannot match hand speed with him, so when Ali throws a quick flurry, Joe is very vulnerable. Very vulnerable.
Closest to life and death I've ever seen. Two equally matched fighters at the top of their form with an intense competitive edge, actual hatred, if you will, that it didn't seem that you could survive that.
With everything that was at stake between them mentally and psychologically, yeah, I don't think near death is too hyperbolic a statement.
It looked like Ali was going to have to quit in the corner because he was getting so beat up. He couldn't breathe. He said in the corner, I feel like I'm dying. This must be what death feels like.
He and Frazier both left it all there, and neither of them ever should have laced on gloves again.
Muhammad Ali is pretty well spent. This has to have been one of the most bruising heavyweight championships of all time.
13-13.
She was 14, sprightly as a sunbeam, utterly fearless, and on a magical midsummer night in 1976 was judged to be perfect. Nadia Comaneci, a 4'11" Romanian waif, zipped through and around and over the uneven bars in Montreal and was accorded the first score of a perfect 10 in any Olympic gymnastics event.
Nadia Comaneci transfixed the country to see her be perfect. Perfect.
Everybody in Montreal was shocked, including the electrical equipment with Nadia Comaneci, when she got the first 10 ever recorded in gymnastic history, and the scoreboard said 1.00. It was only equipped to go up to 9.99.
I do remember watching it as a kid from Montreal, and it's not like I was into gymnastics, but I remember it was like this big deal, because, ooh, nobody's ever had a perfect 10. Well, I dreamed of being Nadia Comaneci. No, I'm just kidding.
Here comes Nadia out of nowhere. Bam, 10. It's like, whoa.
Nadia was a powerful, very sturdy, very confident young athlete. The one always knew what she wanted to do and always was an ultimate fighter on the floor.
She was just so far and above in difficulty than anybody else. She was doing things that, oh my goodness, you didn't dream about. I mean, she really was breaking a lot of ground. I was just completely inspired by her.
12.
On October 18th, 1977, Reggie Jackson clubbed a home run in Game 6 of the World Series. This is a recording. So is this. 3 pitches from 3 Dodger pitchers in 3 consecutive bats ended the same way, the ball disappearing into the night. 3 first-pitch homers worth 5 runs in an 8-4 Yankees clinching. Thus, Mr. October was born.
I had a feeling he would do something real big that night. When you're in the zone like that and you're on center stage, Reggie just kind of just pops out at you.
Boom, Hooten, home run. Boom, Elias Sosa, home run. Boom, Huff. This majestic, soaring, towering home run. And it was like, can you believe this guy did this?
I tell you, I was never so sick to see this guy hit 3 home runs in one game off of 3 different pitchers. I couldn't believe it, really.
I'll never forget the moment where he hits the 3rd home run and he goes around first base and Steve Garvey is applauding inside his glove.
Afterwards, somebody said, did you
applaud him in your glove. I said, I mean, if I had hit 3 in a game, I would hope the opposition would say, that is special.
And that feeling of being the man for a day was nice because I was a fan and a player and was both at the same time.
11.
On May 6th, 1954, Roger Bannister, a gaunt, tireless running machine, propelled himself 4 times around the track at Oxford, where he was a medical student. His time for the mile froze the stopwatch at 3 minutes 59.4 seconds. The 4-minute barrier was finally broken. He ran the first quarter in 57.5 seconds and the last in 58.9.
What Roger Bannister did is he broke through something even greater than any kind of physicality, which was the psychological barrier of the 4-minute mile.
Roger Bannister's 4-minute mile has been surpassed thousands of times, but like the first one to climb Mount Everest, you become immortal just by being the first.
He ran it on a day, May 6th, which was raw, windy. He spent that day at the hospital doing his rounds, got in a subway, took a train, and at 6 o'clock at night broke the 4-minute mile. I mean, there's no legitimate way to think that this would have been the day. People have been trying for this, you know, for half a century.
I saw a quote one time, and it talked about sports that Roger Bannister had written. Only in something like running can finality be achieved, but it is not the type of finality that leaves you with nothing to live for, because sport is not the main aim in life. Yet to achieve perfection in one area, however small, makes it possible to face uncertainties in the more difficult problems in life. And that, to me, just hit the nail on the head what it's all about.
Welcome back to Who's Number One. In this edition, we're counting down the 20 greatest solo performances of all time. Before we get to our final 10, here's what we've done so far.
20.
Kellen Winslow inspires Chargers.
19.
Magic Johnson, center of attention.
18.
Ben Hogan wins U.S. Open.
17.
Red Grange accounts for 6 touchdowns.
16.
Bjorn Borg outlasts John McEnroe at Wimbledon.
15.
Ted Williams wraps up 400.
14.
Ali TKOs Frazier in Thrilla in Manila.
13.
Nadia Comaneci scores first 10 in Olympics.
12.
Reggie Jackson, 3 pitches, 3 homers.
11.
Roger Bannister breaks 4-minute mile. So now we resume our list with number 10.
10.
On April 13th, in the final round of the 1986 Masters, having read that his best days were long gone, Jack Nicklaus stormed vengefully through the back 9 at Augusta National. He eagled the 15th en route to a 30, and his 65 was enough to win by a single stroke. At 46, the Golden Bear became the oldest Masters champ and put on his 6th green jacket.
Even as late as the 8th or 9th hole, he wasn't even close.
He was more of a ceremonial golfer at that point.
Missed the cut in the U.S. Open the year before, missed the cut in the British Open the year before.
The great save at 8, the birdie at 9, that propelled him to walk to the 10th tee with spring in his step as if he was 25 years old.
I just started making birdie after birdie after birdie. You get a little confidence, you know, you say, hey, I'm in this hunt. I hadn't remembered playing like this for a long time. It's part of my old memory.
He had one of the most pretty forehand shots you ever imagine. A high, it never left the flag.
And he can't even see where the ball's landing, and he's having to ask Jackie where to land, you know? And the crowds are going crazy, and your goosebumps were like this.
He hits his shot off 16T. I said, be the right club. And the ball, honestly, had not left the end of the tee. And he looked at me and winked and said, it is.
All of a sudden, I wasn't Jack Nicklaus, 46 years old. I was Jack Nicklaus in the prime of his career, knowing what he could do coming down that stretch to do it.
I hadn't had that magic for a while.
He outthought everyone, and he outthought the golf course.
I knew that I was in position to win a golf tournament. I made that putt on 17, and that's the first time I was in the lead in the golf tournament all week.
Jack Nicklaus, what he did at the 1986 Masters was absolutely one of the most inspirational things I've ever seen. It was as if he had a 15th club in his bag, and his name was God.
9.
He defied gravity.
On October 18th, at the 1968 Olympics, in the thin air of Mexico City, Bob Beamon accelerated precisely 19 strides down the runway, launched himself 6 feet off the ground, and for a brief moment flew. He came down 29 feet 2.5 inches later, eclipsing the world long jump record by an astonishing 21 3/4 inches.
That was always this thing that nobody except Superman was ever going to do.
He told me he felt like he was just floating. He said, I've never, ever felt that way.
I only wanted to stand on that podium and win a gold. I look back and I said, wow, you know, that's gonna, I wonder what that's gonna be. And I was pretty upset because I had landed on my butt. They had to go out of the stadium to get a manual tape for the jump because the jump was actually too long. They measured it at 8.90 and they flashed it up on the board. And so I said to my teammate, Ralph, who's throwing the discus?
In the long jump, like in the pole vault and like in the high jump, your increments of new records are like this: inch, maybe 2 inches, 1.5 inches. This was almost 2 feet. This was out here. This was unbelievable. Absolutely unheard of.
8.
Here was a so-called journeyman pitcher who'd had a past filled with inconsistency, and yet on one day he pitched the greatest game in the history of baseball.
On October 8th, 1956, Don Larson, known more for his partying than his pitching, authored the only perfect game in World Series history. The imperfect man paralyzed the Dodgers 2-0 in Game 5. His performance came only 3 days after he failed to get out of the second inning in Game 2.
I took my hat off and wiped my brow, and I've probably said a little prayer. I've probably said, oh man, get me through one more.
The imperfect man today pitched a perfect game. Not only that his record before that series and afterwards was so spotty. He was never a great pitcher. He was maybe never even a very good pitcher.
Larson pitched the second game of the World Series. We knocked him out of the box.
Look at the setting, the 5th game, World Series, Dodgers, Yankees, and everything. But look at the lineup. Hodges, Gilliam, Reese, Jackie Robinson, Amaris, Snyder, Ferrillo, Roy Campanella. Former and future MVPs, future Hall of Famers. This guy didn't face the Montreal Expos.
That day, the son of a gun had good stuff.
97 pitches. I mean, right, just what you would want. Ted Williams said the series may very well depend on Don Larson because Larson's the toughest pitcher that I've faced.
One of the wonderful things about baseball is that mediocre players sometimes accomplish the most remarkable things.
7.
In February of 1990 in Tokyo, Buster Douglas, a 42-1 underdog, unleashed a shattering 5-punch combination that concluded with a concussive left hook, and Mike Tyson and his aura came crashing down. Douglas scored the 10th round KO to win the heavyweight title after having been knocked down himself in the 8th. Tyson came in 37-0 and had never been on the canvas.
7.
I knew that I could do this game, that I could box, that I could be in here with the best of them.
Buster Douglas came in at the absolute peak that Buster Douglas could be. And I was astonished as the fight went on that he was fighting as well as he was.
As the rounds went by, I saw Buster Douglas taking charge of the fight. He was not afraid. He was in command. He was in control. And I said, you know what?
Something's going to happen here.
For the first time, I've seen Mike Tyson staggered. Both guys trying to fight their hearts out. Tyson nailed again. Buster Douglas has brought it up from the depths of courage.
I was in the zone, man. I was in that zone,
I've never seen a guy get hit like that. If Mike Tyson didn't have a huge neck, he'd have ripped his head off.
James Buster Douglas, the new heavyweight champion of the world. What a shocking surprise.
Six.
On June 15th, 1938, in the first night game at Ebbets Field, Johnny Vandermeer, a 23-year-old lefty for Cincinnati, threw a no-hitter. But not just any no-hitter. No, this no-no was his second straight, 4 days after his previous start against Boston. This one, though, was adventurous. He walked 8, loading the bases in the ninth. But it was historic. His career record, 119 wins, 121 losses.
Johnny Vandermeer is a name that, as a young girl growing up, reading baseball books, it was one of the first names I got to know because of the fact that he did have those back-to-back no-hitters.
Whenever somebody has pitched a no-hitter, his name invariably pops up the next time the guy pitches. Now, this is a guy who has more baseball immortality than almost anybody.
2 no-hitters in a row. Nobody's going to do that. They file that. Never happened.
6.
I can't imagine Johnny Vandermeer's record ever being beaten.
Vandermeer wasn't really an outstanding pitcher. Just shows you how freaky a no-hit game can be.
5.
On August 6, 1926, Gertrude Ederle, only 19, slipped into the water on the French coast in the morning and emerged on the English coast that night. Despite rolling seas and a punishing tide that forced her to swim 14 extra miles, she became the first woman to conquer the English Channel. Her time, 14 hours, 31 minutes, was almost 2 hours faster than any man.
I think it was absolutely amazing because no woman was considered capable of ever doing it.
Let's face it, women in some ways are a lot tougher than men, so they can take the pain.
Even today, swimming the English Channel is a very difficult thing.
It takes a lot of intestinal fortitude to be a successful marathon swimmer because not only are you doing the distance, there's also cold water. I mean, in the English Channel, when I swam it, was about 58 degrees. It's cold when you're in there for 10, 12 hours.
When Ederle swam the channel, the boat was decked out with American flags and there was patriotic music played the whole time that she was in the water. She and her father really played the theme of Americanism. People loved them for it, except for the British.
Gertrude Ederle, swimming the English Channel, that she coated her body with automobile grease in order to prevent hypothermia. I thought that, my God, that was an image that lingered in mind.
4.
On April 13, 1997, 11 years to the day after Jack Nicklaus became the oldest winner of the Masters, Tiger Woods, at 21, became the youngest. He spread-eagled the field with a record 18 under par 270. Woods also became the first person of color to win a green jacket.
It was like suddenly seeing Mozart at the piano.
I've never won a major championship before. And on top of that, I had a 9-shot lead. I don't have the experience. I don't know what it's like to be out in the major with the lead and how to handle the situation.
It wasn't your typical golf crowd. And I'll tell you something, that's a euphemism, but the fact of the matter is, that's the first time when it became clear to me that golf, wasn't going to be exclusively a white man's game anymore.
A place that didn't allow black members till 91, hadn't had a black player till Lee Elder in the 70s.
The further Tiger got ahead, the more people wanted to see him.
And not only broke my record, but he broke it by beating the rest of the field by 12 shots. I mean, that's phenomenal.
He would miss a tee shot behind a tree, and he would curve the ball and end up 6 feet from the hole. I mean, it's exciting.
It was probably one of the most difficult rounds I've ever had to play in my life.
He took the course and almost physically reshaped it as we're watching him play, because no one had ever played like that before. He's only 21 years old. So to watch this kid with such maturity and such game just get more and more confident as the week went on, it was hard to believe what we were seeing.
He was in that rarefied air that athletes occasionally get in where he could do absolutely no wrong.
The Masters have always been his primary objective. When he walked up that aisle, he walked into my arms.
On May 25th, 1935, at the Big Ten meet in Michigan, Jesse Owens torched the record book. In less than 45 minutes, he broke 3 world records. The long jump at 26 feet 8 1/4 inches, the 220 in 20.3 seconds, and the 220-yard low hurdles in 22.6 seconds. Earlier, he ran 100 yards in a record equaling 9.4 seconds. He did all this only days after suffering a tailbone injury.
His back was hurting him, so I gave him a rub down, see? So the next day he goes out and he breaks all these records. And I said to him, you know, I rubbed those records out of your behind, you know that? We were so accustomed to him that we didn't really realize that. You know, I'm talking about the other guys on the team. It was just another day at the office.
The 100, the 200, broad jump, I guess they call it then, 220-yard low hurdles. Those 4 events, a sprinter's specialties, I guess you might say. Jesse just appeared to be flowing, and some athletes, you hear a pounding sound, every footstep, the boom, boom, boom. You didn't get that with Jesse, you just heard a tick, tick, tick when he ran down the center track. Very light on his feet and just running seemingly effortlessly.
When his races came up, everything stopped. It was quiet. And then when the gun went off, you could hear this noise. Ah!
On June 9th, 1973, a copper-colored 4-legged speedball named Secretariat topped off a bedazzling Triple Crown by not just winning the Belmont Stakes, but by crushing the field and wrecking the clock. Big Red's 31-length victory margin was a record, 2 3/5 seconds faster than the previous mark.
Secretariat rode very well, has good position on the rail.
Secretariat, who was a great athlete. You know, he was a horse, but he was a great athlete. Now, it's one thing to win a Super Bowl by 2 points. It's another thing to win it by 40.
Secretariat's on the inside, by a head.
I reckon it was an honor to get to handle a great racehorse like he was.
Secretariat, it looks like he's opening.
Every time I see a tape of Secretariat winning the Belmont, I still get a shiver.
The lead is increasing.
2.
Secretariat is blazing along. Secretariat is widening now.
Just awestruck by the horse's performance.
He is moving like a tremendous machine.
This huge, magnificent animal that wasn't tied up in scandal, wasn't tied up in money. He just ran because he loved running.
Secretariat by 12.
I really thought he was probably the greatest looking racehorse of all times.
Secretariat is all alone. He's out there almost a 16th of a mile away from the rest of the horses.
Runaways are usually the dullest thing in sport, but just the unbelievable domination that this horse had over the rest of his field, and he just kept accelerating and accelerating.
Secretariat leads his field by 18 lengths.
Everybody was speechless. And then, when it set in,
Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead. He is going to be the Triple Crown winner.
I actually saw people crying at this event. I mean, it was such an overwhelming thing.
Here comes Secretariat to the wire. An unbelievable, an amazing performance.
Haywood Hale-Broom told me he was talking with Jack Nicklaus, and Nicklaus said, I was watching it on television and I cried. I never saw perfection like this.
An amazing, unbelievable performance by this miracle horse.
Anyone who saw him then still talks about him now and has passed the stories on to their children and their grandchildren.
That is a record that may stand forever.
The search for number one in all of this esteemed company leads us inevitably to this performance. Number one now and possibly forever. On March 2nd, 1962, with 46 seconds to play, Wilt Chamberlain detonated the dunk that made history. It gave him 100 points in one game. He made 36 of 63 field goal attempts at the line, his area of vulnerability. He converted 28 of 32 in Philadelphia's 169-147 rout of the Knicks in, of all places, Hershey, Pennsylvania. The Big Dipper by the quarters, 23, 18, 28, 31.
There's the big fourth quarter, and everybody's thinking how many's Wilt got to get.
When you say Wilt Chamberlain, you're saying the most dominant athlete in the history of team sport.
Chamberlain has 71. He's within 2 of the record.
I'm not too sure what to say. I mean, nobody's. Kareem never came close. Moses Malone never came close. Jordan never scored that.
He could not be guarded. He could not be defended. He could not be thwarted.
1.
He was the greatest physical specimen that anybody has ever seen on a basketball court.
So how many times in recent memory does anybody even score 50? I mean, that's rare. Maybe a couple times in a season.
Chamberlain has 75 with 10 minutes to go.
The thing spoke for itself. I mean, it'll never be matched. I mean, who's going to score 100 points in a game?
History being written tonight in Hershey.
Wilt was bound to score 100 points, whether it was going to be that season or some other season in the future.
We were going for 100. His record was our record.
The guesses are running as high as 100.
In the second half, the team decided that maybe they can get 100, so they were feeding him constantly.
1, 1, 1.
He's going for 1-0-0.
You'll never, ever see something like that again.
He just scored at will, and it wasn't all layups.
1 minute and 1 second to play. Chamberlain has 98. He can make it easily.
It was the greatest foul shooting night of his career.
No matter where the ball went, Wilt got it.
Into Chamberlain.
I just wish I could watch a complete tape of that game because I'd pay to see that today.
The most amazing scoring performance of all time. 100 points for the Big Dipper.
Look, the greatest is not a term you just throw around lightly. To qualify in this category, the performance must be the sort that lives on and on and on. And who better to talk on and on and on, and to judge the ESPN Classic ranking than our resident second guessers. Gentlemen, have at it.
All right, my initial thought is I would like to commend the committee for not going the knee-jerk reaction and just throwing Vince Young onto this list. Right. And I'll give it to you for the following reason. Vince Young's performance was not the greatest ever. It was just the most recent. Was he great? Yes. Was he transcendent? Yes. 2 or 3 weeks later, are we sitting here calling this the greatest performance of all time? That would be very typical of things that we do today, but it would be inappropriate. I'm glad we did not just knee-jerk him into this
Well,
list.
the only thing I'll say in defense of his performance is everybody in the world knew going into that game, if Texas was going to win, Vince Young had to be the MVP. He had to be the guy, whether he was throwing it or whether he was running it, and we know he did both extremely well in that game. So, I mean, a lot of times you get great performances out of great players, but in this one, the expectation was that was their only shot, and he came up and he rolled the biggest 7 of his life to have his team win the national championship. So while I mostly agree with what you're saying and not that knee-jerk reaction to throw him right there, he should get some strong consideration for
Maybe
that.
he should, but that's the point. One of the things these things need is reflection and context. I think it is much too soon to be deciding where that performance belongs because it's fresh in our minds. Let some other things happen in our lives, and then we'll start figuring it out. I would like to take a close look at this list, if I may, and voice a couple of concerns that I have. First of all, how in the world is Don Larson throwing a perfect game in the World Series, only number 8? This is in the World Series, okay? This is on the biggest stage, the biggest games you can play.
This is it.
And he was perfect. Inherent in the definition of the term perfect game is perfect. What does perfect mean? It means you can't be better. I have to believe Don Larson deserved a little better than number 8.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
The other one that's missing, where is Christian Laettner? You know, Laettner is one of the most overlooked great players in college basketball history. If you look at the greatest college basketball players of all time, Christian Laettner has to be on the list.
He's got to be there.
Has to be.
Absolutely.
4 Final Fours, 2 national championships, and his individual performance against Kentucky and that round of 8 that everybody remembers because he hit the shot that won it on that turnaround, the length of the court pass from Grant Hill. That is one of the great performances of all time and certainly needs to be in the top 20.
Nowhere to be found there. How about Phil Simms' performance in the Super Bowl? 22 of 25. Has there been a better job in the Super Bowl at quarterback for a performance? Where is that as well? I think that's missing. And you always say when you're going to add something to the list, you have to take something off. And I immediately zeroed in on taking something off. Sorry, my apologies. Get the animals out. All right? I'm sorry. I don't buy. When we were doing the greatest athletes of all time, you got horses in there. Horses run well, go to stud, turn to glue. They don't belong on these kind of lists. I'm sorry. And Secretariat, wonderful. Number 2, police shouldn't even be on the list.
Let me dispute that. We didn't have horses. We had horse. Secretariat stands alone. I like having Secretariat
Is Secretariat
on
on
this
4 legs or 2? Thank you. Goodbye.
Well,
get out.
That I didn't know that all of a sudden we were George Orwell and making these decisions based on the book Animal Farm. I like Secretariat on this list. I'll tell you who I'll
Where's
take
Lassie?
off.
All right, is Lassie coming in? Where's the squirrel that can water ski? We're going to put that squirrel in there for great performances. Give me a break. Get the animals out.
Well, now you're just being silly.
Please get up with the animals.
I say more horses, and if you get a chance next time, throw in a duck.
I say you're a horse's. Throw in a duck.
Now it's time to see how you, the fan, voted on Sports Nation on ESPN.com for the greatest performances of all time. Number 5, Johnny Vandermeer's second no-hitter. Number 4, Jesse Owens sets 3 world records, ties 1. Number 3, Secretariat's bedazzling Belmont. Number 2, Red Grange accounts for 6 touchdowns. And number 1, Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game.
So that'll do it for this edition of Who's Number 1. Thanks for joining us for ESPN Classic's ranking of the 20 greatest performances of all time. We will be back to continue our countdown of the teams, the athletes, and the events that have shaped our world of sports. Until then, let the debating begin.